They warned me about loving beneath my station. Every noble family in Florence said Bastian Ricci would destroy everything the Visconti name had built over 4 generations. A stable master, a man whose hands smelled of leather and horse sweat, a commoner with no lineage, no title, no place in the grand world of Italian aristocracy. My father disowned me the morning after the wedding. My mother wept as though I had died. The Marchesa Torelli, my own godmother, crossed the street rather than acknowledge my existence. Within a week, I went from being the most sought-after lady in Florentine society to a ghost no one dared speak to. 6 months of whispers. 6 months of shame. 6 months of society treating me like a disease. Then the Duke of Savoy summoned my husband to the Pitti Palace. I watched from the crowd as Bastian walked forward and bowed before royalty. And then the Duke did something that made the entire room gasp. He bowed back, and when he spoke, he called my husband by a name I had never heard before. That was the moment I realized I had never truly known the man I married. This story is entirely fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons or places is purely coincidental. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Subscribe to our channel because stories like this drop regularly, and you will not want to miss what comes next. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. This channel is built on courage. Subscribe if you believe in the courage to choose your own path. Here is a question for you. Would you risk everything for someone society tells you is beneath you? 6 months earlier. Florence, 1810. The Palazzo Medici glittered like a jewel box. Chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors. Ladies in silk gowns glided through rooms where centuries of power had been negotiated, where the very foundations of Italian culture had been shaped by families whose names carried the weight of empires. Lady Caterina Visconti stood near a window, watching the performance. Because that was what it was. A performance. Every smile calculated. Every conversation a negotiation. Every introduction a potential alliance or a devastating snub. This was the Gran Mondo, the great world of Italian nobility. Not merely a social circle, but an intricate machine of power maintained through calling cards, orchestrated gatherings, and ruthlessly enforced standards of propriety. In England, they called it the ton. In France, le beau monde. But in Italy, the Gran Mondo operated with particular precision because it was built on something deeper than wealth. Lignaggio, bloodline, lineage, the documented proof that your ancestors had shaped history itself. In this world, you were not valued for what you accomplished, but for what you inherited. The Medici banking empire, the Sforza military dynasties, the Borgia papal connections. These families had not simply witnessed history, they had written it. And if you could not trace your blood back to those who had held power when Italy was being forged, you were nothing, no matter your wealth, no matter your intelligence, no matter your character. You were simply nothing. Lady Caterina, the Marchesa Torelli, appeared at her elbow. You look pensive this evening. Merely observant, godmother. Observing what, child? Caterina gestured subtly at the room. How much effort we expend maintaining the illusion. The Marchesa's fan snapped open. A warning. Careful. Cynicism is unbecoming in a lady of your position. Position. Always position. Caterina was 22 years old, educated by the finest tutors, fluent in French, English, and Latin. She had read Dante and Boccaccio, studied philosophy and history, and possessed a mind that hungered for ideas the way her peers hungered for advantageous marriages. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that she was a Visconti, that her family tree connected to the House of Savoy through her great-grandmother, that her bloodline was documented in papal registries going back 3 centuries. The Count di Luca has been asking about you, the Marchesa continued. A most suitable match. Suitable. The word tasted like ashes. The Count di Luca was 53 years old, a widower, wealthy, well-connected, and profoundly boring. Caterina had endured exactly one conversation with him, during which he had spoken exclusively about his hunting dogs and his gout. This was her future. This was what Lignaggio purchased. I shall consider it, Caterina said, because that was what daughters did. The ball continued around her. The performance never stopped. 3 days later, Caterina visited her family's estates outside Florence. The Visconti maintained a villa in the countryside. Nothing compared to the great estates of the true nobility, but respectable. Vineyards stretched across rolling hills. Olive groves marched in neat rows. And the stables? The stables were her father's pride. Horses represented status in ways modern people struggle to understand. A fine horse cost more than most families earned in years. The breeding, the training, the maintenance, all of it announced wealth and position to anyone who understood what they were seeing. Caterina had always loved the stables. Not for status, for peace. The smell of hay and leather. The gentle sounds of horses moving in their stalls. The absence of performance and pretense. She walked the length of the building, letting the quiet settle her mind. Then she heard it, a voice, reading aloud. She followed the sound to the tack room. Bastian Ricci sat on a wooden bench, a book open in his lap. He was perhaps 27, dressed in the simple clothes of someone who worked with his hands. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he read, completely absorbed. Caterina recognized the words. Dante, the Inferno. But he was not reading in Italian. He was reading in Latin, the original language of Dante's education, the language of scholars and priests. Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, Caterina said softly. Bastian's head snapped up. He stood immediately, the book clutched in his hands. My lady, forgive me. I did not hear you approach. You read Latin. It was not a question, but it hung in the air between them like an accusation. Color rose in Bastian's face. Ah, yes. My father taught me before he died. Your father was a scholar? An educated man who fell on difficult circumstances. Bastian set the book down carefully. I should return to my work. Wait. Caterina stepped closer. What else do you read? Bastian hesitated. Then, as though the words were being pulled from him against his will. Cicero. Virgil. I have been trying to work through Aristotle, but my Greek is... He trailed off, seeming to remember who he was speaking to. Forgive me. I overstep. You overstep by being educated? I overstep by forgetting my place. There it was again. Place. Position. The invisible prison that defined every interaction. Notice how society conditions people to believe their worth is determined by their birth. When someone apologizes for possessing knowledge or talent because it does not match their social position, that is internalized oppression. This is how hierarchies maintain themselves. Not through force, but through convincing people they deserve their place in the order. Caterina made a decision that would alter the course of her entire life. What if, she said slowly, your place is wherever your mind can take you? Bastian stared at her. My lady, I have been reading Petrarch, his sonnets, but the translations feel insufficient, as though something essential is lost. Would you be willing to read them with me? In the original, she was proposing something scandalous. Not in the way society usually defines scandal. There was nothing improper about studying literature, but a noble woman asking a stable master to be her intellectual equal, to teach her, that violated every principle of lignaggio. Bastian understood. She could see the understanding in his eyes, and beneath it something else. Hunger, the same hunger she felt, for ideas, for conversation, for connection that went deeper than social performance. I would be honored, he said quietly. That was how it began. Over the following months, Caterina found reasons to visit the estate weekly. She told her mother she needed the country air, the quiet, time away from the oppressive social calendar of Florence. Her mother was delighted. Perhaps the peace will settle your mind, make you more amenable to the Count di Luca's suit. Caterina said nothing. At the villa, she and Bastian met in the library, a small room her father never used, filled with books purchased for display rather than reading. They read Petrarch, then Boccaccio, then Machiavelli. But more than reading, they talked about ideas, philosophy, the nature of power and justice, the question of whether nobility was born or earned, the ways education was gatekept by those who feared what would happen if everyone had access to knowledge. Do you know why Latin is taught only to the upper classes? Bastian asked one afternoon. Because it is the language of the church and scholarship? Because it is the language of exclusion. Bastian's voice was passionate. If you control who learns Latin, you control who can read law, theology, medicine, history. You control who can access the knowledge that shapes society. It is not about God or scholarship. It is about power. Caterina had never heard anyone speak like this. Certainly not in the Gran Mondo, where everyone was too busy maintaining their position to question the system itself. "You sound like a revolutionary," she said. "I sound like someone tired of pretending talent does not matter." In early 19th century Italy, education was viciously controlled by class. The church and aristocracy maintained near-total monopoly on formal learning. Peasants and working people who somehow acquired education, through a priest's charity, enlightened employer, or sheer determination, faced a brutal paradox. They had the knowledge to advance, but lacked the social connections to use it. This created an entire class of educated poor. People whose minds had outgrown their circumstances, but who had no legitimate path forward. Bastian was trapped in exactly this paradox. He possessed the education of a gentleman, but without lignaggio, without family connections, without the magic of noble blood, all his learning was worthless in any official capacity. So he worked in stables, and he read Dante by candlelight, and he taught the sons of merchants in secret, earning a few coins to purchase more books. Caterina found herself thinking about him at odd moments. During balls, during dinners, during the endless, performative conversations that filled her life. She thought about the way his face transformed when he discussed ideas, the passion in his voice, the hunger for something more than the narrow life society had assigned him. She thought about him far more than she should. One evening, her father summoned her to his study. Conte Visconti was a severe man, tall, distinguished, utterly consumed with maintaining the family's position in a world where position was everything. "The Count di Luca has made a formal offer," he announced. "A generous settlement. The wedding would take place in 6 months." Caterina's stomach turned to ice. "I have not agreed to this. Your agreement is not required. You are 22 years old, already older than is ideal for marriage. The Count overlooks this because of our family connections. You will not receive a better offer. I do not love him." Her father's expression did not change. "Love is a luxury for people who can afford to fail. We cannot." "What does that mean?" Her father was silent for a long moment. Then, "It means our circumstances are more precarious than you realize." Caterina's mind raced. "The debts, you know nothing of." "I know everything, Papa." Caterina kept her voice steady. "I have seen the letters from the Medici Bank, the mortgages on the Tuscan estates, the loans from the Wool Merchants' Guild. We are drowning, are we not?" Her father's face went white. "How did you?" "I read. I pay attention. I am not the decorative fool you have raised me to be." "Then you understand why this marriage is necessary." "I understand why you think it is necessary. That does not mean I agree." "Caterina, I will not marry the Count di Luca." Her father stood. "You have no choice." "I have every choice. I am of age. I can refuse." "And what then? Become a spinster? Live on our charity while we sink further into debt? What future do you imagine for yourself?" Caterina met his eyes. "A future I choose. Not one sold to the highest bidder to pay your gambling debts and poor investments." Her father's hand slammed against the desk. "You forget yourself." "No, Papa. I remember myself. Perhaps for the first time." She left the study, left the palazzo, left Florence entirely. She went to the villa, to Bastian. She found him in the stables, brushing down a mare. "Caterina." He used her given name now, when they were alone. "What has happened?" "My father has arranged my marriage. To a man I do not love. To pay debts I did not incur." Bastian set down the brush. "I am sorry. I am not asking for sympathy." Caterina stepped closer. I am asking if you meant what you said. About talent mattering more than birth. About choosing your own path." "I did. I do." "Then prove it." Her heart hammered. "Marry me." The silence was absolute. "Caterina." Bastian's voice was strained. "You do not know what you are asking. Your family would disown you. Society would destroy you. You would lose everything. I would lose everything false. Everything built on pretense and performance. everything that values my name more than my soul. I have nothing to offer you. No title, no wealth, no position. You have yourself. That is enough. Pay attention to this moment. Caterina is making a choice based on genuine connection, not fantasy. She knows exactly what she is giving up. She is not running from something. She is running toward something. That is the difference between impulsive rebellion and conscious choice. When someone shows you who they truly are through months of consistent behavior, believe them. Bastian took her hands. His were calloused, rough, the hands of someone who worked. "Are you certain?" he asked. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." They married 4 days later. A simple ceremony in a small church outside Florence. The priest was elderly, half-blind, and asked no questions when Bastian paid him. No family attended. No friends. No one from the Gran Mondo. Just Caterina and Bastian and 2 witnesses pulled from the street. When Caterina signed the register, she felt something shift inside her. Not fear. Not regret. Freedom. The explosion came swiftly. Caterina's mother received word first. Her wail echoed through the Visconti palazzo. Servants came running. Her father locked himself in his study. By evening, all of Florence knew. Lady Caterina Visconti had married a stable master. The scandal was delicious, unprecedented, the kind of story the Gran Mondo would feast on for months. Caterina's father sent a single message: "You are no longer my daughter." Her mother sent none at all. This mirrors the real scandal of Lady Elizabeth Cavendish Bentinck, who in 1759 secretly married a Scottish surgeon against her family's wishes. She was disowned, removed from all family records, and lived the rest of her life in comfortable but unremarkable circumstances. Her family literally had her portrait removed from the gallery and her name struck from the family Bible. In aristocratic society, disobedience was not merely punished, it was erased. The Marchesa Torelli, Caterina's godmother, did worse than send a message. 3 days after the wedding, Caterina saw her on the Via de Tornabuoni. The Marchesa was emerging from a shop, surrounded by ladies of the Gran Mondo. "Godmother," Caterina said, approaching. The Marchesa's face went cold. She looked through Caterina as though she were made of glass. Then she turned to her companions and said, loudly enough for the entire street to hear, "The air has become rather unpleasant. Shall we continue elsewhere?" They swept past Caterina without a word. That was when Caterina understood the true nature of her choice. She had not simply left society. She had been erased from it. Bastian's house sat near the Arno River. Small, modest, the kind of dwelling a successful artisan might own. 2 rooms downstairs, 2 rooms upstairs, a small courtyard in back. Nothing like the Visconti Palazzo with its frescoed ceilings and marble floors and rooms so vast your footsteps echoed. But it was clean, warm, and it was theirs. Caterina stood in the main room, taking inventory. Simple wooden furniture, a table and chairs, a hearth, and books. Everywhere books. They lined every wall, stacked on tables, piled in corners. More books than the Visconti library. Where did all these come from? Caterina asked. Bastian looked uncomfortable. "I collect them. When I can. Books are expensive." "I know, Bastian. A single volume costs more than most workers earn in a month. This," she gestured at the hundreds of books surrounding them, "this represents a fortune." He was silent for a long moment. Then, "I told you my father was educated. What I did not tell you is that before he died, he made me promise something. That I would never stop learning. That I would use whatever gifts God gave me, regardless of circumstances. So you bought books. So I bought books. And I tutored the sons of merchants. Men who have wealth but lack the social connections to secure their children's education. You teach. In the evenings. After my work in the stables is complete, I teach them Latin, mathematics, rhetoric, the subjects required for university entrance." Caterina sat down slowly. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because positions as private tutors require references from noble families, which require social connections, which require lignaggio." His voice was bitter. "I have the education of a gentleman, the knowledge of a scholar, but without the right bloodline, those things are worthless in any official capacity. So I hide what I do, charge modest fees, and pray that someday, perhaps, merit might matter as much as birth. This was the brutal reality of early 19th century Italy. The entire educational system existed to reproduce class hierarchies. Universities were theoretically open to anyone, but entrance required preparation in specific subjects, taught in specific ways, using specific texts. The only way to receive that preparation was through private tutors or elite schools, both of which required social connections to access. A poor boy might have the intellect of Galileo, but without patronage, he would never even reach the university gates. This system was not accidental. It was designed to ensure that education, and therefore power, remained in the hands of those already possessing it. Caterina felt something shift in her understanding. Bastian had not simply accepted his circumstances. He had fought against them in the only way available, quietly, persistently, building a life of meaning despite the system designed to prevent it. "I want to help," she said. "Caterina, I am fluent in French and English. I know literature, history, and music. I have been trained in all the social graces necessary for navigating aristocratic spaces." She met his eyes. "Your students need more than Latin to succeed. They need to understand how the Grand Mondo functions, how to navigate it. I can teach them that." Bastian stared at her. "You would do this?" "I would do this." And so she did. Word spread quietly through Florence's merchant class. The sons who came to study with Bastian now also learned from his wife, the former Lady Visconti who had thrown away everything to marry beneath her station. The students were uncertain at first. A noblewoman teaching them? But Caterina proved herself quickly. She taught them French literature, English commerce practices, the intricate, unspoken rules of aristocratic society, which fork to use, how to properly address a duke, the subtle meanings behind calling card etiquette. She taught them the performance she had spent her life mastering. The irony was not lost on her. She had rejected the Grand Mondo, but she was preparing these boys to enter it. "Does it bother you?" Bastian asked one evening. "Teaching them to succeed in a world that rejected you?" Caterina considered. "No, because they will enter it differently. They will know it is a performance. They will understand that the rules are arbitrary, maintained only by agreement. That knowledge changes everything." The work was hard. The pay was modest. Merchant families had money, but not the vast wealth of nobility. Their income was uncertain, dependent on how many students they could attract. But every evening, sitting at their simple wooden table with eager young minds, Caterina felt something she had never experienced in the Visconti Palazzo. Purpose. Still, the shunning hurt. Caterina told herself it did not matter. She had chosen this. She had known the consequences. But knowing the cost did not make paying it painless. She saw her former life everywhere in Florence. The city was not large enough to avoid it. At the market, she encountered ladies she had danced with. They turned away without acknowledgement. At the theater, she watched from the upper galleries while the Grand Mondo filled the boxes below. Her former box, purchased by her family for generations, now belonged to someone else. Even the servants whispered. One afternoon, buying vegetables from a street vendor, Caterina overheard two women talking. That is her, the Visconti girl who married the stable boy. What was she thinking? She was not thinking. That is the problem. Girls like that believe love conquers all. Then they wake up one morning and wonder where their jewels and servants have gone. The words stung more than Caterina expected. That evening, Bastian found her standing by the window, looking out at the Arno. "Does it hurt?" he asked quietly. Caterina did not pretend to misunderstand. "Yes, I can release you from the marriage. Annulment. You could say I deceived you, that you did not understand what you were agreeing to. Your family would accept you back. In time, the scandal would fade. You could rebuild your life." Caterina turned to face him. "Is that what you want?" "What I want?" Bastian stared at his hands. Strong hands. Capable hands. Hands that smelled of horses and leather and honest work. "What I want does not matter. I will not be the reason you lose everything. This is what healthy sacrifice looks like. Notice carefully. Bastian is offering to give up what he wants most because he prioritizes Caterina's well-being. But he does not make the decision for her. He does not say, "I am setting you free for your own good." He asks what she wants. He offers her a choice. That is the difference between sacrifice and control. True love expands options. It does not eliminate them while claiming to know what is best for you. Caterina crossed the room, took his hands in hers. "I have not lost everything," she said firmly. "I have lost people who valued my name more than my soul. People who loved the performance I gave, not the person giving it. People who would have supported me in any choice, as long as that choice benefited them. Caterina, let me finish. What I have gained is worth infinitely more. I have gained work that matters. Students who thrive because of what we teach them. A partnership built on genuine respect rather than social obligation. And I have gained you." Bastian's throat worked. "I am not worth. You are worth everything they said you were not. You possess honor without needing a title to prove it. You value learning for its own sake, not for the status it confers. You have offered me freedom when you could have demanded loyalty. That is worth more than all the lignaggio in Italy." They stood together in the fading light. Outside, Florence continued its ancient rhythms. The Gran Mondo gathered for parties and performances. Marriages were negotiated. Alliances formed. The machinery of aristocratic society ground on. Inside the small house by the Arno, two people chose something different. And for a time, that was enough. Then, 6 months after the scandal, the letter arrived. A messenger in livery so fine it made Bastian's simple clothing look like rags. The seal on the letter was unmistakable. The House of Savoy. Bastian broke the seal with trembling hands. "Read." His face revealed nothing, but Caterina saw his knuckles go white. "What is it?" she asked. "The Duke of Savoy is in Florence. He requests my presence at the Pitti Palace. Tomorrow, at noon." The Duke of Savoy was not merely nobility. He was royalty. The House of Savoy ruled the Kingdom of Sardinia and held massive influence across the fractured Italian states. For a stable master to receive a summons from such a figure was unprecedented. "Impossible. Did you know him?" Caterina asked. "Before? No. I have never met him. Never communicated with him. I cannot imagine why he would." Bastian trailed off, staring at the letter as though it might suddenly make sense. Could this be dangerous? Political intrigue? Some accusation? I do not know. That night, neither of them slept. Caterina lay awake, her mind racing through possibilities. None of them made sense. Why would the Duke of Savoy concern himself with a disgraced noblewoman and the stable master she had married? Unless someone had told him something, made some accusation, turned their quiet life into a political matter. In Napoleonic Europe, everything was political. Borders shifted like sand. Alliances changed with each season. The Italian states existed in constant tension between French occupation, Austrian influence, and their own fractured independence. A duke did not summon commoners without reason, and reasons in this world were rarely good. Morning came too quickly. Caterina dressed in her finest remaining gown. Not the silks and jewels of her former life, but respectable, modest. "You should not come," Bastian said. "If this is dangerous, if there are accusations, you should not be connected." "We are married," Caterina interrupted. "Whatever this is, we face it together." They walked through Florence's narrow streets to the Pitti Palace. The building dominated the skyline. Massive, imposing, built by the banking family that had rivaled the Medici, it was a statement in stone. A declaration that wealth and power could create something that would outlast empires. Guards in Savoy livery stood at attention. Their faces were impassive, professional. They had clearly been expecting Bastian and Caterina. That fact somehow made everything more frightening. Inside, the palazzo was overwhelming. Frescoes covered every surface. Gilded details caught the morning light. Marble floors reflected their nervous faces. A chamberlain led them through corridor after corridor. Past rooms filled with courtiers, diplomats, and nobles from across Europe. Every eye tracked their movement. Whispers followed like a wake behind a ship. Caterina kept her spine straight, her chin up. She had been trained for this. Even if she no longer belonged to this world, she remembered how to move through it. Finally, they reached the doors to the presence chamber. The chamberlain paused. "His Grace will see you now." The doors opened, and Caterina's entire world shifted on its axis. The presence chamber was designed to make you feel small. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, covered in frescoes depicting the triumphs of the House of Savoy. Marble columns lined the walls. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, flooding the space with light that seemed to expose every flaw, every weakness, every fear. At the center sat the Duke of Savoy, perhaps 50 years old. Silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Around him stood advisors, military officers, and papal representatives. This was not a private audience. This was theater. In Italian courts of this period, public audiences were performances designed to send messages to political factions. Every gesture, every word, every position in the room communicated power. The Italians called this sprezzatura, the appearance of effortless authority. Caterina felt every eye upon her. She recognized faces from Florence's highest circles. The Marchese Aldobrandini, the Contessa Strozzi, people who had cut her completely 6 months ago. Now they stared with undisguised curiosity. The chamberlain's voice rang out. Signore Bastian Ricci and the Lady Caterina Visconti Ricci. Bastian bowed deeply before the Duke. Caterina curtsied. The full court curtsy she had been taught as a girl. The Duke studied them in silence. The moment stretched, became uncomfortable. Finally he spoke. Bastian Ricci, you have lived in Florence for how long? 5 years, Your Grace. Working as a stable master. Yes, Your Grace. A humble occupation. Honest work, Your Grace. The Duke's lips twitched. Indeed. Tell me, do you know why you are here? I do not, Your Grace. The Duke stood, began to walk slowly around them. 28 years ago, something remarkable happened in the Kingdom of Sardinia. A scandal that shocked the nobility of Europe. Caterina's breath caught. The Lord Ricci della Scala, Prince of the Blood, heir to vast estates in Verona, connected by lineage to the Holy Roman Emperors themselves, fell in love with an unsuitable woman, the daughter of his estate manager, a woman of no particular birth. Sound familiar? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He was given a choice: renounce the woman and maintain his position, or marry her and lose everything. The Duke paused. He chose love. Lord Ricci della Scala renounced his titles, his estates, his family name. He took his wife to Florence and lived as a common man. He raised his son to value character over lineage, education over inheritance, and integrity over appearance. Bastian had gone very still. That son stands before me now. The room erupted. Gasps. Exclamations. The Duke raised his hand. Silence fell immediately. Sebastiano Giuseppe Ricci della Scala, when your father died 5 years ago, your uncle sought you to restore you to your rightful position. You refused. Why? My father made his choice. I honored it. By working in stables, by working honestly, by living according to the values he taught me. The Duke smiled. And therein lies the difference between nobility of blood and nobility of spirit. He turned to the court. Your uncle passed away 3 months ago. The Della Scala estates, the titles, the responsibilities, they fall to you now. The King of Sardinia himself has instructed me to restore what is rightfully yours. Bastian shook his head. Your Grace, I did not seek this. I know. That is precisely why you deserve it. A man who refuses power when offered, then lives with genuine integrity. That man is exactly who should wield authority. An attendant brought forward documents on a velvet cushion. These are the deeds to the Della Scala estates. The formal investiture as Lord Della Scala. Letters of credit from the Medici Bank. Your family's accumulated wealth, held in trust for 5 years. Bastian looked stunned. Your Grace, you will accept, because the Della Scala name cannot remain vacant. Because your tenants need a lord who cares for their welfare. Because power unused is power wasted. Then the Duke did something that made the entire room gasp. He bowed to Bastian. Not a nod. A full bow. The bow of equals. When he straightened, his eyes were warm. Welcome home, Lord Della Scala. The room erupted again. The whispers spread. The message sank in. Caterina stood frozen. Bastian, her husband, a stable master, was a prince, had always been a prince. The Duke turned to her. Lady Caterina, your father claims you married beneath your station. What say you now? Every eye fixed on her. Caterina thought about the past 6 months. The small house, the students, the quiet evenings. The night Bastian offered to let her go. Your Grace, she said clearly, I did not marry beneath my station. I married into my values. The silence was profound. Then the Duke laughed. Genuine, delighted, perfectly said, your wife is a treasure. Do not ever forget it. He turned to the nobles. Let this be a lesson. Lady Caterina recognized the value in this man when he had nothing. She chose character over convenience. And she was proven right. Within a week, everything shifted. Documents were authenticated. Witnesses testified. Sebastiano Giuseppe Ricci della Scala was formally recognized and invested with his father's titles and estates. They moved from the small house by the Arno to the Palazzo della Scala, a residence maintained in trust for decades. And with it came the vultures. The same people who had shunned Caterina now flooded her with invitations. Ladies who had cut her in the street now claimed they had always suspected something special about Signore Ricci. The Marchesa Torelli appeared 3 days later, dressed in finest silks, carrying an elaborate gift. Dearest Caterina, I have been so worried about you. We must have tea. Caterina stood in the doorway. You crossed the street to avoid me 3 months ago. The Marchesa's smile did not falter. I was protecting you. The whispers were so cruel. You said the air had become unpleasant. A figure of speech. You pretended I did not exist. Caterina kept her voice level. You valued my name when it benefited you, discarded me when it did not. Now that my name has value again, you return. That is not friendship. That is opportunism. When you are ready to apologize genuinely, we may speak again. She closed the door. More came. The Contessa Strozzi, the Baronessa Alfieri, every noble family that had participated in the shunning. Caterina refused them all. Then her father arrived. Conte Visconti appeared on a bright Tuesday morning. He wore his finest coat. His expression was warm. Caterina, my daughter. Caterina did not move. Conte Visconti, you would address me so formally? You disowned me, said I was no longer your daughter. I am merely respecting your wishes. I was angry. Surely you understand. I understand you valued your reputation more than my happiness. I understand that when I made a choice you disapproved of, you cut me from your life without hesitation. What I do not understand is why you think those actions deserve forgiveness, simply because circumstances have changed. Her father's face darkened. I am your father. You owe me respect. I owe you nothing you did not destroy when you chose your pride over my well-being. When you are ready to apologize genuinely, we may speak again. Her father left without another word. Bastian took over the Della Scala estates with wisdom born from remembering what it meant to labor. He paid fair wages, improved living conditions, listened to tenant complaints. But more importantly, he established a proper school, not just for noble children, but for any child showing academic promise, regardless of birth or gender. Caterina worked alongside him. She taught languages, literature, and navigation of social expectations. She knew both worlds now, the glittering surface and the substantial depths beneath. One evening, a young girl approached after class. Her dress was mended but clean. My lady, is it true that you married Lord Della Scala when he was just a stable master? It is true. Were you not afraid? I know. That is why it works. They stood together as the sun descended behind Florence's rooftops. Around them, students prepared to return home. Young minds full of new ideas, new possibilities. The scandal that had once defined Caterina's life had become merely a footnote. She had been mocked for marrying beneath her station. But she had not married beneath anything. She had married into her truth, her values. The ton still whispered, still judged, still maintained their hierarchies. Let them. Caterina had found something more valuable than their approval. She had found work that changed lives, love that expanded rather than confined, purpose deeper than social performance. She had found a life worth living. Caterina was mocked for loving a stable boy, then praised for marrying a prince. But she was the same person making the same choice based on the same values both times. The only thing that changed was what others could see. Build your life on what you know to be true, not on what others perceive to be valuable. Watch how people treat those who can do nothing for them. That reveals character. Understand that healthy sacrifice builds rather than diminishes. When everyone shares the same opinion, it feels like truth. But majority opinion is not wisdom. You can love your family and still protect yourself from their toxicity. Live your life for the truth only you can see, not for the appearance others can judge. Everything else is just noise. And noise cannot drown out the quiet certainty of a life lived according to your deepest values. That certainty is louder than any scandal, stronger than any social pressure, more enduring than any title or estate or ancient bloodline. It is the only thing worth building your life upon. Some truths do not need validation. They simply are. This story reflects real events from 1810s Italy during Napoleonic rule. The rigid class system depicted actually existed. In 1759, Lady Elizabeth Cavendish Bentinck was disowned for marrying a Scottish surgeon. Her family erased her portrait and struck her name from records, exactly like Caterina's experience.